Bore da, good morning. My name's Una Lloyd. I'm from the Good Practice team of the Wales Audit Office. Allai estyn croeso cynnes iawn I chi gyd bore yma. Dyn ni yma i'r digwyddiad o data Agored. Can I extend a really warm welcome to everyone who's listening in this morning, and to our speakers we'll come back to in a minute. Bydd y gweddill o'r digwyddiad yn cael ei cynnal trwy gyfrwng Cymraeg, ond mae croeso cynnes iawn I chi ofyn cwestiynau trwy gyfrwng Cymraeg neu Saesneg. The remainder of this event is going to be through the medium of English. What I've just said is that people are very welcome to ask questions through the medium of Welsh or English. So let's have a look at who's out there listening to us this morning. By the last count, we have about over 130 links registered, and varies between 1 and 4 people listening in. So it's fairly safe to say that about 250 people listening in to us. Right, I understand that at least half of you have never listened into a webinar before, so I'm going to try and paint a bit of a picture of what it looks like. So where are we? We're in the Wales Audit Office's main offices in Cathedral Road in Cardiff. We're all 4 of our speakers happen to be here today. But where are you, I wonder? So we've got people listening in from Canada. Good morning, Canada. Gosh, I hope you've got your coffee there. All 4 corners of Wales, England, Ireland, and I believe there's somebody who we can't identify where they're actually from, so we think they might be Israel, we're not sure. But who are you? There's a massive list. So what I've done, I've tried to sort of put you into sort of groups, if that's okay. There's 25 of you in groups. So we have health bodies, Arts Council, national parks, local authorities in Wales, housing associations in England and Wales, Sport Wales, the BBC, town and community councils right across Wales, social enterprises right across Wales. We've also got some legal firms who are supporting public services in Wales. And then there's a variety of community safety partnerships across Wales. Natural Resources Wales, Health Canada, who are based in Ontario, good morning to you. Devon County Council, good morning to you down there. A number of police organisations, fire and rescue services, our audit cousins in England, good morning National Audit Office in England, the Welsh Government, National Assembly for Wales, the Care Council for Wales, Careers Wales, the Future Generations Commissioner's Office, good morning to you, WCVA, various partnership bodies, and last but not least, the Irish Government. So good morning to you. So I hope I painted a bit of a picture in terms of who's listening in and where you are situated. One of the things I want to get across to you this morning is going to be hopefully relaxed and informal. We might have a bit of a laugh here. We are learning to use Google Hangouts, the first time we've ever used it, so please bear with us. So in terms of interactive, I liken this to, I heard a clip about the Euros 16. The Welsh team football players openly said, look, the importance of the 12th player for them was so important, as in the supporters. I say that to you. We're an interactive, we might be sitting in Cardiff, but without you asking the questions, we're nothing. So I've built in sufficient time for you to ask questions. I'll add a bit of a provide you, because there's over 200 of you listening in. If we don't manage to get around to all of you, the speakers very kindly said that they will respond to all questions via our blog, if that's okay. So my job is to keep everyone on time, to encourage you to ask questions. And there's a variety of ways of asking. You should have had all joining instructions, but just to quickly remind you, you can email, if you don't have a Google account, you can email it very easily to good.practice@audit.wales. That's the first way. The second way, if you do have a Google account, you can post it on the panel through the Q&A section, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. And the third one, if you tweet, we've got a hashtag, and we'll be picking up on the WAOOD hashtag. Which reminds me, we've got 2 people who are slightly to the right off screen. Bethan and Eros will be picking up on your questions and passing them through to us. Morning both. You okay? So we've received a number of questions already from people, because it is holiday time, who aren't able to listen live, but we'll be picking it up at a later date. which reminds me to share with you, we're going to be posting this video on YouTube. Details will follow through afterwards. Also, there's a massive community of you out there. There's, as I've said, at least 130 of you have actually registered with a number of people listening in. You're a community. We'd like to continue that. So we'll share your details with you afterwards and a way we can continue afterwards. So I'd like to say now a big thank you to our speakers, because without you folks kindly giving up your time, this morning wouldn't happen. So thank you very much indeed. So without further ado, let's actually introduce the speakers, shall we? I'll start to my left because I'm naturally left-handed, so my left hand always tends to go out. Can I ask you to introduce yourself to everyone?
Of course, my name's Helen Wilkinson and I work for Natural Resources Wales as their Monitoring Information Management Group Manager.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Darren Barnes. I work for the Office for National Statistics and I'm Head of Data Publishing.
My name's Agored, and today I'm here representing ODI Cardiff, the Open Data Institute community node for Wales.
Thank you, Esco. And last but not least,
my name is Deborah Williams and I work for the Bid Price Exchange team here in Cardiff and Bordeaux.
Right, come on then, let's kick this session off, shall we, folks? So, David, as you happen to be on my right, why are we holding this webinar on open data?
Well, WAO is really interested in, in open data as an enabler of better public services. And last year we ran a seminar on effective sharing of data, and that ended up being around personal data. But in the scoping of that, with the effective services vulnerable groups team, the Welsh Government, big part of that came out as open data and thinking about, well, actually, how can open data help public services to be better? So we kind of committed then to doing a separate event around open data, so that we could really kind of focus on what that looked like and how we could help people. I suppose in terms of why open data specifically, the GovLab got a great open data impact site, which kind of breaks it down really easily in terms of what open data can do. So the way that they break it down is around improving government through transparency and accountability and tackling corruption, through enabling citizens to make better use of their data, through creating opportunity for private sector and third sector organisations to innovate and make use of data, and then last but not least then to kind of solve public problems as well, to look at that data and identify different ways forward, identify trends and seeing how public services can improve. And I suppose for us as well, with the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act coming through, and that's a big thing for us. We'll be changing the way that we audit, and we're really interested as a good practice team to be thinking around, well, okay, how can good data sharing, how can open data enable aspects of that act really to come to the fore? So that's something I'm sure we'll be discussing as the webinar goes on.
Some powerful messages and powerful reasons as well that are coming through, I feel. So let's move to our first question. Let's go. I'm going to start with you. What is open data?
Open data is data that anyone can access, use, or share. And some people think that maybe it's a binary choice. Data is open or closed. Actually, there's a spectrum upon which data exists. On the one end is closed data, data that for very good reasons shouldn't be shared. Things like the nuclear submarine codes. You wouldn't want that to be open or shared. Then as you move along, you get shared data, and that can be data which is exchanged as per agreement, or it might be under some kind of chargeable regime. So money that's access you can pay for access to. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got open data, which again is data that anyone can access, use, or share.
Okay, thanks for that. Darren, can I come to you?
Mm-hmm. So from a kind of ONS point of view, open data has been, so the Office for National Statistics, we've been kind of doing, making those open principles a mantra for the last sort of 15 years. ONS has its bread and butter is about statistical releases. It's all about data. It's all about sharing data. And when we moved from sort of paid for paper products, I said 15 or so years ago, we moved to this idea of bringing things to websites, having them electronically available, downloadable, free of charge, under some sort of perhaps more restrictive open government license as it was back in those days. But fundamentally, those data sets were there ready for people to use. Not in the greatest formats, I don't disagree. PDF is as long as the data is out there, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a start.
But obviously with new technologies coming through, people want better access. And so for me, open data is not just about the principles of making it available, shareable, usable. It's actually being able to get the greatest utility. And I think moving on from those open data principles now of trying to make web developers get better access to data, or a service between local governments and central governments, or even schools and their kind of government departments. So it's about reusability, it's about utility, and it's about making sure we have access to all that data that's there and really rich, and can make really kind of powerful steps towards connecting data.
Dan, thank you. Helen, from a natural resources point of view, natural resources Wales, I should say.
From a natural resources Wales point of view, it's quite an interesting time for us. It's 3 years ago now that we were created as a new organisation from 3 different organisations with different approaches.
Yeah.
So we are going to an open by default approach now as a new organisation, but the real benefits for us as an organisation, we've got a big remit to maintain and sustain natural resources of Wales. It's a large remit, we can't do it alone.
No.
So open data is a part of our solution to enabling others to make decisions about the environment, about natural resources of Wales, responsible decisions, and also to innovate, find new ideas and insights of data as we start to combine it and interrogate that data and build new insights into important messages for the natural resources of Wales. It's also, as a public sector body, does help us to deliver against various legislative drivers as well. So for compliance reasons, it will help us deliver against the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. We've got the Environment Act as a new piece of legislation in Wales as well, which is specific for us. The Environmental Information Regulations, freedom of information, there's obligation in there to actually proactively release data in a reusable format as well.
Okay.
And the Public Sector Information Directive and also the Inspire Directive.
I'm picking up a point there, you saying you can't do it alone, so we'll pick that up later. That's why, thank you, Helen. Okay, Dyfrig, can I come to you on this one, if that's okay?
Yeah, I suppose I'm just interested really in adding the kind of context for that. I suppose why now? And for us, going back to what I said at the start around the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, we'll be, changing our approach to audit, and at the same time, public services need to be changing their approaches as well. Is the current way that they share data fit for purpose? And that's something that they really need to be thinking about. And in terms of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act specifically, it's been a theme of our work over the last couple of years. And the 5 ways of working the Act just fits so incredibly neatly. With open data, it's ridiculous. So in terms of integration and collaboration, that data sharing aspect is huge there. In terms of thinking long term, going back to identifying trends and using data to see what's on the horizon. Again, open data is key there. Involvement, spoken about community empowerment there. Really can help services to involve people in what they're doing. And last but not least, prevention as well. Using that data to be able to see what the crisis points are and to identify them and identify effective ways of negotiating that moving forward. So it really does, in terms of context, really neatly fit what Bill asks of us.
Thank you for that. Can I say thank you to you already sending loads of questions in? Really appreciate that. So without further ado, I'm going to come to Darren to ask him the first question coming in. Questions come in: to call something open data, Darren, it has to be free, but should it also be in a particular format or meet particular criteria?
So it's a good question. So in terms of, there are a number of different principles that ESCO sort of mentioned earlier on, in terms of just not about free, it's about access to that data as well. And I think that any sort of data that is out in the world is good data. It's better being on a web, or better being made available rather than being stuck on someone's hard drive or on your desktop PC.
Okay.
So for me, it's not so much about the format. It makes it easier if we do release things in kind of non-proprietary formats like CSV.
Okay.
That's always a reasonably good common denominator.
Okay.
Or Excel as well is equally as good, as long as we don't try to handcraft that thing so much it makes it difficult to use.
I'm making a note there for CSV. Is there a link we can share afterwards?
Absolutely, yeah.
Lovely. I'm making a note of that. We'll capture that for afterwards. ESCO, can I come to you on a question we've had in prior? It's about data maturity. how developed is your organisation's approach to data?
Okay, well, I'll talk on behalf of organizations who are trying to get their heads around open data.
Okay.
Because actually, when you start on a journey of trying to figure out what are the benefits and why you should go down this journey, there's an interesting correlation with how good your your organization is at using its data. In terms of data maturity models, it's helpful to think of what can you do, what do you have the capacity to do within your organization with the data that you've got. Most organizations have this kind of backward in time looking view. They can collate data over a period of time and then look at what happened. As you move along a maturity model, you want to get to a situation where you can right now understand what's going on, so real-time data, and then as you move into higher levels of data maturity, you want to be able to use the data that you have and sophisticated models in order to predict what are the kind of outcomes that you want, and that correlates a lot with the duties of the Future Generations Bill. Okay. So in fact, in Wales, organizations are going to have to get a more sophisticated level of data maturity. And as you go down a journey of exploring how your relationship with open data works, there are some free tools available that allow your organization to assess how mature is our sophistication and use of data and things.
Could we, you mentioned free tools.
Yeah.
Could we send the links afterwards?
Yeah,
Would that
it's
be
a
okay?
thing called Pathway.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll make a note of that and we'll make sure we'll send those to you afterwards if that's okay. Right, well, thank you for your questions, much appreciated. I'm going to move on swiftly. Helen, I need to come to you if I may. I've had a bilingual question coming in. The question is, beth allwn ni wneud o ddydd I ddydd mwyn perswadio pobl sy'n amhersonol data agored am y byddion? So, what can we do on a day-to-day basis to persuade people we are doubtful of the benefits of open data?
Yeah.
You're an organisation that's gone through the last 3 years coming from 3 very different cultures. What's the magic formula? Is there one?
There's probably different bits to that magic formula.
Yes, I'm sure.
And I'm sure there's more out there as well that we're going to experience. But on a day-to-day basis, I mean, the start of the process is really getting support from the top, from open data strategy or approach. That's one thing. But with individuals, it's trying to demonstrate the benefit to them, working with those individuals, understanding what the difficulties they have in dealing with requests for information. Yeah. How painful is that sometimes, having to deal with a request for information? And we've been able to unlock time for some staff that might have been responding to requests for information by releasing its open data, and then they don't have to answer those questions, answer those queries under FOI for freedom of information, for example. So it's unlocking that time, but if you can find a few good examples and perhaps find some champions locally, is one option as well. Where we're not trying to sell a message coming from a central data team as a kind of you will approach, is actually coming from those that are benefiting themselves from that open data approach. So it's showing the benefit, understanding the cost savings as well. For an organisation, we've been able to drive down costs significantly by taking an open data approach. That's a benefit, particularly with public sector squeeze, so it's a really important message.
Could I add, possibly, at the end of the day, the whole purpose of open data is to help contribute towards public service improvement?
Absolutely.
I'm not seeing nobody disagreeing on this table. Okay.
I think in practice that happens. So there are some examples out there. I guess that's a good point in highlighting the examples where it's already happening. Okay. Where there are new systems being integrated into, where data is integrated into systems between 2 public sector bodies and is already driving that benefit and enabling us to make decisions. Examples might be some of our habitat data, for example, is provided to local authorities in order to help the planning. Planning system.
Could we share those examples afterwards? Because that might be helpful for delegates who are trying to sort of overcome that issue in terms of with colleagues in their own organisations. Okay, thank you. Dyfrig, I'd like to come to you on this question, but I actually might be bringing Darren in afterwards if that's okay. The comment is, I agree that open data has great potential to help us understand and analyse challenges and find solutions for public services. Here comes the but. But do we have the skills and cultures within our organisations to take advantage of this?
That's a really good question.
It's a really good question.
I think it does depend on each individual organisation. So going back to what Esco was saying about data maturity, organisations are in very different places, and some organisations might be making really fantastic use of the data, might have a lot of skills within their organisation. Darren was saying about how ONS are. in terms of, it's something that's been quite a long-term journey for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other organisations who are very much just starting out on the journey who probably might not have those skills. And somebody who's not, practically doing this on a day-to-day basis, I count myself in that camp.
Yeah.
But in terms of, how this kind of moves forward, I think it's, about identifying that and about thinking about, well, what kind of culture do you want within your organisation? And I think actually there's a big part about culture that is why this agenda is so important. Because if you think about, traditionally the public sector is very much seen as a kind of patriarchal kind of system where we're the ones with the power, we're the ones with the data, and actually open data can really start to change the balance of power and where who has it, and empower people to start to make their communities better places to live, start to innovate in terms of public service delivery then. So actually in terms of culture, it can be a really important part of how we move this conversation forward. And it is about, I think having leadership that buys into it, but also I think having stories and evidence of the difference that open data has made as well.
Okay. Debbie, thank you. Darren, I've got one more question in this section before we move on.
Okay.
I've got another one to pose to you. It's come in, this question's just come in this morning actually. It says, how do we find out what data is out there? My impression is that lots of different bodies produce lots of different data, but it's not easy to find. I agree with that comment. It's not easy to find and what's out there, and often the data is on platforms that are difficult to work with. So it's an extension of your last response, but the main body of the question is, how do we find what data is out there? And that's a really good question.
Yeah, the statement, it couldn't be any more true. There's not a single answer. There's no link that I can send to anybody who's joining into this webinar today that'll be the magic bullet that will give you access to all the range of different statistics out there. There are tons of data sets that are available. They're available via many different sites, many different platforms, many different mechanisms. One of the things, sorry, I don't have a single answer to that. That is an absolutely true statement. What we all know this is true. One of the things that we're trying to kick off within the Office for National Statistics is a discovery piece. So it's a look out there, an investigation into how we might bring more of the government statistical data into a single portal. And that doesn't mean we're going to have one monstrous website that everything's on, because that can make it difficult to search and find data as well. But it's certainly trying to identify what sorts of data are out there, what sort of information we can pull together and start trying to link up and connect so that we can give the richest sense of data that's out there in one platform. That doesn't encapsulate all the sorts of different public sector data, absolutely not, but it's a kind of pathway for that, and we'd hope that will be a catalyst then to try to help bring more of that data in.
Darren, thank you. It's got to make sense sort of start talking about the Open Data Institute, doesn't it?
I'd like to have a stab at answering that question.
Go on. Please do.
So nobody's invented the Google for data yet. We're still waiting on that. However, if you have an idea of what kind of data you're looking at, there are a few fruitful starting points. So if you're in Wales and you're looking for geographical data, mapping and things, there's CLE, which also contains the LIDAR data that everybody's excited about.
Can we have that website? Can you give us the name of that title?
CLE.
CLE, okay.
CLE, yeah.
We'll share that link with you afterwards. It's CLE, thank you very much. CLE is place in Welsh.
And then also for non-geographical, more statistical-based data, there's Stats Wales, and that source is now starting to accommodate more and more kinds of data sources. If you want to go beyond Wales, then data.gov.uk is a good place to start looking. There's also Welsh information there. And if you want to start looking at a European level, the European data portal is actually quite good. So there are starting points, but I can't tell you there's the one place to find the data until I understand what is it that what kind of data are you looking for?
Okay, so that's the key. It depends what kind of data you're looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One thing I'll add on that is you might be looking for raw data source because you're technically accomplished to do something with it, so you'll probably have an idea of where to look for it. The other thing is you might be interested in a subject and you don't have the technical competence to do something with raw data. And what has happened recently is the open data industry has now created a lot of, there are new companies that are built on open data. So if you're interested in government spending, for example, I wouldn't recommend that you dive into the raw data and try to process it yourself, But some people here in Wales, Transparent Wales has been looking at
Yeah.
Welsh Government spending, and
Okay.
the Spend Network in the UK. They add value by taking all of this data, doing some processing on it, and then giving you insight and stuff.
Thank you. Thanks, Helen. That's great. Thank you for that, for the answering first question. We'll move on to the second question, if I may. I can see there's a few more questions coming in now. I'll try and come back to them in a minute, if I may. So let's move on to question 2. Esco, can I start with you? Sorry, Helen, actually. Can I start with you first about, so how can we make data open, Helen? Bit of a deep question, this one, isn't it?
It's quite a very wide, a very broad
Yeah.
question. There's a lot in there, but I suppose coming at it from a Natural Resources Wales perspective,
Okay.
having worked through 3 organisations coming together and reviewing our current practices, it's been a really good opportunity to take the best from each of the 3 situations and actually build a new approach. The key part, as a result of that, we've ended up with, we had 78 open data products when we performed, and we're now at 109 and growing. So in that time, we've increased the service by having that review and having that check, which is good timing. So the important part of that was getting a good political steer, having a policy that's driven from the top, the organisation as well, with support from those that benefit from the delivery of open data with the time savings, which I mentioned earlier. We now have a new steer in Wales with the Welsh Government's own open data strategy as well, which helps as well, I think, from a Welsh perspective. And then you want to get governance in place. A lot of this is about people rather than the data and technology as well. So we need people that are accepting those roles. Information asset owners are key roles within the public sector, as well as having data custodians and data stewards that will do that actual pulling out of data. So getting those roles in place and accepting that as a part of their duties is really key to make it happen.
That's a change of the mindset you're asking there. That's a behaviour change I'm hearing coming through, yeah?
It can be for some. They're not used to it, and you ask them something new, or it's at the top of their list of priorities. So you have to work with them. So that's when the support as an organisation that this is something we are doing, which is really important as well. So just working with them through that. The upside is actually that if it is open data and it's published once, they don't have to respond to request for information. So there is something in it for them.
Okay, that's a fair comment. Okay, that's a good one to end on that one. That's great. Thanks, Helen.
You want to consider the impact as well on business models. If I think beyond public sector, open data is brilliant, but actually for some organisations it's not something they can actually do because of their business model. And if we're looking at open data and freeing up open data relevant to wellbeing of future generations, and sustainability generally, we have got a bigger task on. I think as we look beyond public sector.
Okay.
Can I come with a couple more?
We'll go to the final time.
Okay, so one other thing we want to look at simple guidance for staff is complex. They don't want to know about legislation. Let's make it easy for them. So what we do is we actually proactively apply the public interest test to any data set up front. So that says, is it open or not? If it's open, then it goes. So it's a proactive approach rather than being reactive, which is quite useful.
Wow, that's
and we've narrowed it down to what can't be released, rather than saying we've got this, can we release it? What is it we can't release? That's a cultural decision that your organisation's made, isn't it? Wow, that's powerful. Yeah, so that helps unlock it quicker and want the data a lot quicker. So some simple guidance that helps staff follow that, and you need someone to help them through it. They can't do it alone.
I'm putting you on the spot now, Helen. Would you be happy to share that approach, sort of, so we can share that what you've said there? Share it wider.
We can share our guidance.
Would that be okay? Thank you. Thanks for thinking.
And comms, the other thing, really, communication is an important part of it. Cultural change is massive. So internal and external communication. It's great having these services, but people also need to know they're out there to use them for that benefit. So
we've had one of those questions this morning, haven't we, about sort of how do people know it's there?
And just one other point we've had to do as well is remove any barriers. So one of the aspects is a lot of our products are actually derived from other people's data, so we don't necessarily have the rights. So we negotiate for those rights with that third-party supplier where we can have it and make it open. So that's our starting point with any derived product, that we try and negotiate the openness with the third-party IPR, intellectual property rights owner.
That's great. It's a great starting one. Thank you. Thanks for that.
Systems and tools, we worked in partnership with the Welsh Government and we published through the FAIR portal, the place portal. And that's been key in terms of, costs and efficiencies and working together. It's been a real benefit for the Welsh Government.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Darren, we're in the Office for National Statistics.
So as I've mentioned, the Office for National Statistics produces, a monster amount. I think it's somewhere, if you include the census data that we released to the UK, It's somewhere in the region of 10 billion observations over a couple of year period. So lots and lots of data.
I can't even see what that figure looks
Absolutely,
like.
it's monster. And there's more to do. I'm not trying to suggest that ONS is the exemplar, but for us, opening up data is about the formats, it's about the utility, as I mentioned in the first piece. But I think where ONS could probably do a little bit better is actually where we started when Esco mentioned the spectrum of openness earlier on, and that's all that closed off data space. Now, there are data that we can't release publicly because of commercial reasons or confidentiality reasons, or even, you know, to keep in personal information safe, and that's absolutely key to all this open discussion anyway. It's privacy of that data. But there are data that we can anonymize in a certain amount of way that we can bring in researchers and things to do certain work on certain data. And it's that kind of data that's closed off that people don't know about. But that's not to suggest that we can't make that data, or at least what is there in these kind of these license vaults available through some metadata, making that information discoverable to people so that at least they know this information is there, but you have to go through a certain path. And that might actually open up far more researchers and people in from universities or academia or whatever it might be, coming in, finding that information and grabbing hold of it. And we don't do enough to expose the metadata that describes that information first. That'll help people find that. So it's trying to go from that open data being publicly stuff, but actually there's some stuff as well that may be available inside that we can share too.
Thank you. That's what. Let's go. Thank you.
Yeah. There's a guy from the Montreal open data community said a thing keeps ringing in my ears. He said, open data is fundamentally a community building challenge. So if you imagine that you're a local authority officer and you're trying to get your head around how should I start my journey, it's a really good idea to have some sense of who out there wants to use some of your data that they currently can't have, and what they want to use it for. And then start your opening up activities on the basis of an established need and emerging relationship. And so put your data up there. There was a question earlier, like, how do I start opening data? If you're a local government officer and you've got a spreadsheet of stuff, not the submarine nuclear codes or stuff with people's names and addresses on it, but just some data that you might not even think is useful to anybody else, put it on the website. Put the open government license, all the tricky legal work has been done for you, and that's it. You've published some open data. Now the next thing is to find out who might be interested in that. So you could tweet it and say, I've put some open data available. I don't know if anybody's going to find some value, but do get in touch with me if you're interested in this stuff. And that begins kind of the conversation. Then it's not an abstract thing. It's a more meaningful, okay, now I'm servicing the need of a community that I didn't even know existed maybe. And who knows what value they can build on you putting that out there.
Are there any particular hashtags that they should consider using?
Oh, hashtags. Well, open data is a good one.
That's
hashtag open data,
Okay.
Let's not make it overcomplicated. Just hashtag open data, and it will get picked up. There is a ferocious community. Well, not ferocious. They're wonderful around the world, and people are very helpful.
That's great. Thanks,
I certainly hope that, not to disrespect our local government colleagues, but I certainly hope they haven't got the submarine nuclear codes in our local government. It would be quite worrying, wouldn't it?
It would, wouldn't it?
The thing is, we just don't know.
Deborah, can I come to you on this question?
Yeah, I suppose there's just a couple of things really in terms of what came up at our personal data thing, which event which kind of echoed some of the stuff that's come up, which I found really interesting. Around kind of getting stuff right at the start. So we've talked about formats, talked about licenses, and once you get that right and start in the right place at the get-go, it gets much easier for things to become open and for you to share things in the right way. And if you start from a negative space, then it's much harder to make that information open. So it's about thinking about that at the start. And in terms of how we can make data open, I was really picking up on some stuff that Helen said around getting buy-in, and I think a lot of that is around kind of demonstrating success and showing the successes that they've been having. So it's around kind of how can you evaluate things effectively, knowing at the start, thinking about, okay, what does success look like, what is your benchmark, how are you going to show the difference that open data is made, and because that is the thing about reporting on it, showing okay, open data has resulted in X, Y, and Z. And sometimes we're talking about quite a lot of quantitative data here, but actually the qualitative stories around actually this has made this difference to this community, and because of this has happened. and it's having those stories can really help to move the agenda on, really.
Well, actually, your response there, thank you, Debbie, has opened up very nicely for the first question. Can I say, folks, thank you very much for your questions that are coming through. Can I also say, if you want them to address particular speakers, do let me know. So it's your time to ask the questions, but I'm going to kick off with this one. Helen, it's a perfect one for you. When you work in a diverse organisation, it can be hard to keep track of data available within your own organisation. Any tips
on how to keep abreast of what's in the organisation?
We were chatting about this earlier on, weren't we? It's real. This is reality.
Yeah,
isn't it?
If you have, I mean, ideally you have a central role for a start, I guess, which is trying to, if you like, put those feelers out into the organisation to know what's happening. Maintaining a register of publishing requirements is useful. Metadata, you've got a programme of work which is gathering metadata, knowing the information that's maintained in your main corporate applications. So what are the main things that people would expect from an organisation like Natural Resources Wales? What do they expect from us? So is our flooding, water quality data, our biodiversity data, air quality, that sort of thing. Making sure those are at least covered. If an information asset register, having somebody responsible for that. Can you say the question again?
So the question is, when you work in a diverse organisation, it can be hard to keep track of data available with your own organisation. And any tips that it basically asking?
Exactly. And I guess having some opportunities for internal communications, news. We're here. Tell us what you've got. Here's some benefits. Here's some what projects that have worked well. The examples we've got, as Scott mentioned, LiDAR data earlier. In the last year, just under last year, we've had 3,000 downloads for that. That would have been one person full-time responding to those questions. Wow. So that shows the benefit of open data. So if you can show that, it's also, it wouldn't have been used as much if it wasn't open with anything. So it's increased the use. So those sort of things help people see the benefit. What we've found is actually through producing more open data, our staff are coming to us with their data sets now saying, I want to put this on, I'm getting requests for information. So it demonstrates itself eventually, but it will take time.
It does take time.
But you will never know every pocket of information, and not every pocket of information necessarily needs to be out there either. Do our customers actually want it? I'm not going to invest time in my group in preparing and publishing it actually if nobody wants it. So I think it's understanding that need.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you for that. Let's go. Questions come in for you. I'm just literally showing it to you now. Wondering how much open access academies and public services open data can learn from each other about ethics of making data open or not open.
But the ethics of open access academies, is that the educational sector? The ethics of making data open. So this is kind of interesting because originally a lot of the pressure on public services to release open data came out of transparency advocates saying the citizens now in the 21st century have a higher expectation to be able to see what's going on within the government. And if you look at kind of relative measures of trust between citizenries and government, there's a real kind of live issue there. So that you can take a kind of a principled approach and saying another way of looking at it is that government data which government has collected has already been paid for by the taxpayer. Right? So why should there be extra impediment or friction to make that data available back available to the taxpayer? But actually, ultimately, the debate has kind of 5 years ago when we were going to these early conferences and saying like it's got to be about transparency. It was a good kind of mantra, but we didn't really know what was going to come out of that. Now, in 5 years into the open data journey, if you want, and I'm going to reference Helsinki's story in a minute, the actual value of opening that data isn't so much, yes, there is added transparency, particularly about spending data, but actually it helps siloized public services start to be able to function kind of like internally collaboratively better. So in Helsinki, some of the biggest consumers of the open data are other government departments who previously had to have really awkward conversations across silos with people who weren't very willing to do that. So advantages come in all different ways. It's not just, it's about the money or it's about the transparency or it's openness in general in networked environments is a competitive advantage, however you slice it or dice it.
Thank you for that, Scott. I'm going to actually pose a question to you who are listening in this morning. have you got any tips? Because there's 4 of us on the table here this morning. Maybe you'll have tips because there's over 200 of you listening in. Maybe you've got tips you'd like to share with us. Please feel free to either tweet them, send the questions in. And also what I would like to say is to sort of, what the challenge is, how did you overcome some of the challenges? You're a community out there, let's find out, because the more people that share this information, so the better it is for everybody, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, is there?
Yeah. Can I just add one quick thing?
Yeah, please.
So in terms of understanding what data you have available within departments, actually a data asset catalog can be a really powerful tool. Now, yes, you do need an extra resource to go out and find what that is, an extra resource and to maintain those catalogs. But actually what it gives you is a picture of what's available. And sometimes you have overlapping priorities and overlapping things going on in organizations that you didn't know existed, that you can now sort of rationalize or make more efficient, or actually build new services or new ideas from just knowing this data is available. So data asset is a really, really powerful kind of tool to have at your disposal.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a very powerful question I'm going to pose here. And as I'm going to be saying it, I'm going to be looking up at my speakers and asking which one was going to pick this one up. So no pressure, folks. One question I'm repeatedly asked is, what will people do with it? As the possible uses of data are so wide until a data set is used, how can I know what will happen with it until after it has been released? How do we expect the unexpected use and plan? But that's the reality. Darren, are you happy to put your hand up?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
I need to get a short answer.
yeah, so in terms of open data, the idea is to get it out there so people can use that information. It's about outreach, it's about seeing what people can do. Yes, people will do things you might not want them to do, but that's data. As long as we provide the metadata and the descriptions and what that data is about and how it can be used, then it safeguards yourselves from being kind of seen as being collaborating with some sinister party who might be trying to do something wrong with the data. But get it out there, let people use it. It's data that should be used. But put the caveats, put the descriptions, put the metadata out.
So the key message there is about ensuring that the other caveats are in place.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I need to move on, folks.
Can I just add a brief addition to that? I think peer review resolves some of those issues as well. So if it's used inappropriately, the community will come back and actually say that's been used inappropriately. So it's a really important community point.
Yeah, very good point. Thanks, Anne. Thanks for that. Okay, another question's just coming in, and I'm going to adopt the same approach again. Once data is open, how do we keep track of it? If others are sharing our data without having to come back to us as a source, how can we accurately measure our impact? Good question.
I think there's part of that, if we're going back to the points about community that Helen and Darren have mentioned, is that once you have those peer-to-peer sharing of information, actually it gets a lot easier to track some of the things that get used. I think it's a lot harder if you're an isolated member of a community to do that, but actually by engaging in kind of online conversations, engaging with other public service organisations, with kind of citizens within communities, you're in a better place to be able to track some of that. And it's not always a linear thing. It's not always because of this X, Y, and Z has happened. You might have to think about results-based accountability type aspects of, okay, what are the long-term outcomes of this? And again, thinking about what success looks like and how you get there. But as practitioners, you might have more specific practical advice. So
it's something we battle with. This is a part of justifying the return on investment, if you like. We're investing a lot of money in gathering and storing and managing and sharing data. What is it actually doing for us? One of the advantages of being in a licensing situation is you do know what the information is used for, so you get that information back. Now, in an open environment, we don't get that back. And it is, I guess it's going to be a community-led, if that culture of informing the data provider what it's been used for. And similarly, individuals that voluntarily collect data and offer it up want to know what it's used for. So if I'm thinking of biological recording, there's a lot of biodiversity species data that goes into the planning system. They like to know if it's been used for any benefit. So it's that feedback as well, to providing the data. So it just keeps the whole engine running, if you like, it keeps the information flowing. So
that's a really good point. The benefits of that,
I think if the data download facilities can also have a feedback button or something, it's a very simple tool that if people then offer that. I've
Okay,
used this information to do X, Y, and Z.
that's a really important point. Thank you. Thanks for that. I've got a new question for you.
A new one, all right, I might weigh in a bit on that last one as well.
Yeah, if we got time, we'll come back to it. That's why, because I need to manage the
I'd
time.
slip it in.
Yeah. Is there a way we can stop hiding behind data sharing protocols when we would like to see the data they have?
Is there a way that we can stop hiding behind it?
Can I answer that quickly while
Yeah.
processing that?
Yeah.
So I think part of that is actually around some of the stuff that the Information Commissioner was saying at our effective sharing personal data event. They were saying that the Information Commissioner has never prosecuted anybody for purposeful use of data, where they've gone in and maybe not done things to the letter, and they have, had stern words and looked to ensure that, they do things better in the future, and they have looked to share good practice.
Yes.
But they haven't prosecuted people for the way that they've done that. Where they've prosecuted people is where people have lost data, where they've done careless things with it and kind of placed data in a really
left
dangerous
stuff on
way.
train. They just things like that.
Absolutely. So in terms of what the Information Commissioner is saying, and again we're talking about open data here, anonymized data, non-personal data. So it's these are kind of things that we can build cases for and we can show the benefits of.
And we've had a few questions already in this morning about in advance about checking the view of the Information Commissioner's office on open data. So that's hopefully answered your question in terms of it. For those of you who are listening in and asked questions about the Information Commissioner's office, if that's not what the angle you're asking, can you come back to us and give us a supplementary, if that's okay?
I do think there's one of these. I remember working as a local government officer trying to get data from other bits of my own organization and then hitting with, I can't. Why? Because data protection.
Yeah.
And actually this isn't unrelated to data maturity within organizations. There are wildly over-enthusiastic interpretations of the data protection law that don't really correspond with the law. And the other bit is, if you really think that you should have access to data and it is unreasonably being held, I suppose you could go for a legal challenge and give it a public interest test. When we see these horror stories, it's usually tens of millions of personal data records. I don't think anybody would be upset if what the data set that had been lost on the tube was kind of the location of harbour seals around the UK, which is much more interesting. But going back to that previous question, it's useful to think like at a higher level about the new infrastructure that we need in the 21st century, and data is a fundamental layer in that. So there's questions from people quite legitimately saying, what return do I get if I invest some resources and put that? But maybe what you're doing is you're contributing your little bit of data to a wider ecosystem of data, and that's where people can kind of like add the value.
Okay, folks, thanks for that. Thanks. We're now going to move on to the third question. I'm going to come to you, Esco, if that's all right first. So the third question is, what are the tangible benefits? We've kind of touched on bits of it already, but let's just sort of be very clear. What are the tangible benefits? Imagine people listening in this morning thinking, right, I'm struggling with this and I need this to help with my sort of business case for helping to convert people within my organisation. What would you say to them?
Do you want hard numbers? Well, let's start with
come on, let's start with that.
Okay, hard numbers. The open data global market is worth $5 trillion a year, right? And that only works if everybody plays their part in supplying data into that market. So if you think a bit more on like a Wales localized level, there is an opportunity to create new markets built on the data. A very easy way to think about that is if a local authority area makes their transportation data available, then a player like Citymapper can come in and switch it on for the Cardiff City region. That only works if all of the authorities within the region are putting their data in a useful and kind of similar sort of useful format and stuff.
Think about the individuals who listen now who are going to have to be writing a business case. What would you say to them? What would you expect to see them writing in the business case? I'd say that we have two choices if we're going to go down
The first is that we assume the responsibility for a lot of the effort of developing the specific value on the data that we hold, or we can release it out into an ecosystem where there are value-adding players already, and then we don't have to have the technical, like, which local authority in South Wales has the technical chops to build something like Citymapper? But there's no reason to. You just make your data available into that. There's also, you might have kind of environmental targets and things, and in the EU there's some astonishing numbers of what open data has done. So energy consumption has been reduced by 16%, 1.7 billion euros reduction in public administration costs. So the savings opportunities are vast. Now, I'm not going to here say, it only takes one of you listening to say, okay, let's flip the switch to open data and we're going to get all of these things. There's a journey that you have to go on. But it's indubitable that the rewards that can be reamed from kind of participating in this. But let's not just think about what do I specifically get if I spend an extra 2 hours next week and take the next step to the open data.
It's about the longer term. So when we're thinking about the well-being of the future generations, this is going to contribute towards the aims and the objectives of the well-being of the future generations. Okay, thank you. Darren, can I come to you on this?
Yeah, so in terms of tangible benefits, there's lots of things that go on. There's not just the value internally that we look at in terms of if we do things better, if we are able to streamline our process to get open data through the door, there's an efficiency saving in that. And I think that's one of the key areas when we write business cases that really kind of sells that thing to the senior leaders who sign those off. It's about intangible benefit. It's also about a benefit the UK PLC and to people out there, how that might produce various software innovations. But also there's also a lot of social innovation. So things like the more data we get out there, the more sharing that can happen, and the more that we can observe savings and efficiencies and making improvements, not just public sectors, but just to people in their normal day lives. And one example I always like, I listened to from many years of being at conferences and things, is where sort of local councils come together in a unitary authority and kind of looked at charities who are providing social housing, and they kind of looked at each other and said, what do you do in terms of providing your services to youth? Like, we're not going to share that information. That's ours. And it was a long time kind of commitment to try and get them to start sharing small pieces. But now they can collaborate. All these in the housing charities and the local councils collaborate on things around them to make their customers much better off in terms of one charity was looking at who provides boilers for the houses, and another charity was saying, well, actually we have these providers and our boilers are breaking down regularly, and another charity said, well, these boilers are working really well. And actually from that kind of collaboration, that data, just sharing small amounts, these housing associations were providing better services immediately for their customers. So there's massive opportunities for social good, economic good, internal organisational good, and improving all our lives as well through this sort of thing. So there's a vast array.
I'm hearing that's ringing the bells of all the future generations in the spirit of the act, isn't it? Oh, thank you. Helen.
Okay.
And just before I come to you, I'm seeing a few things coming through on the screen there. Folks, can I say thank you very much for some of these tips that are coming through. What we'll do is we'll blog about them afterwards. If anybody else has got any more tips, please feel free to email them or to send them through. Really impressed with what you're coming through. Thanks very much indeed. Sorry, Helen, I just wanted to share my thanks. Appreciate that.
Okay. In terms of building business case, I guess the hard facts are going to be needed in terms of, are we going to save money, have we got efficiencies, that sort of thing. So I've got a couple of examples here which I've already mentioned them, but our data publishing alone through, say, the Welsh Government's portal, if we were to be responding to those requests for information, we get over, I think it's 5,500 requests in the last year. That would be 2 people full-time just responding to those requests to manage the licenses. Wow. It's a bit of a guesstimate. We think we might be even a bit of an underestimate, but that just shows some of the benefit of getting, what did I say, we've got at the moment 109 data sets out there. So wow, that's saving time. Working together collaboratively, if we can, on systems and tools is also a potential saving. And that's one of the benefits of ourselves from working in partnership with Welsh Government.
And it's not about doing things just once, because if you're sharing that information, I'm getting the sense that sort of it's doing it once coming through here.
Ideally, our aim is to collect once, process once, publish once and use many times. And also publish once. So if we publish to somewhere, so we do our automated, we're going to push our data out to here. Any other mechanism or portal that needs it, we want to draw on that data, so we're not having to send it to multiple customers' portals. So we're publishing once as well as doing the collect once, use many times. We're publishing once.
Wow.
These are our strategy and our aim.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed we'll get there. We're not, we are there for these.
But you're on the
sets,
journey,
but
and and you've got the mindset and the cultural sort of ethos within your organisation to do that.
So that's the efficiencies. I think there is a bigger picture thing here, much bigger. So there's, for our organisation, creating our own savings. Then there's our organisation's remit and enabling others to do our remit with us. Collaboration is a key thing, innovation, and integration. So that's really key for our work. And I think as part of the wellbeing for generations is the involvement aspect as well.
Yes.
If the information's out there, people will play with it, interrogate it, build insights, and they will feel involved. They'll feel empowered to have a say about the essences of the wellbeing for generations in our area. Obviously, it's the environment, but also society and economy. They can have a conversation if the data's there. Yes, we can have that live conversation. So, and then there's the bigger altruistic side, just putting it out there, letting other people do what they like. I've got a couple of examples. For us, our flood likelihood maps are used for conveyancing for houses. So private companies can issue a product which pulls together all the different data sets and information which is needed for conveyancing a house. Ours is one part of a package which they provide to solicitors, for example. So that's generating some information economy for small businesses. And so loads of other uses that you wouldn't expect, I guess, that once the data's out there, but understanding what those uses are, give us that return on investment and help that business case.
Okay, that's nice. Right. David, can I come to you on this one?
Yeah, I've just got a couple of examples really. I really like some stuff the Hampshire Hub have done. So Mark Braggins, who's working now with ESCO at ODI Cardiff, when he was at Hampshire Hub, he did some brilliant stuff around mapping pressure on GPs, which is I think brilliant because they were local government. So actually thinking about things from a wider perspective, about actually how can we benefit other public services. And that's something that we're going to have to think about again with the Wellbeing Future Generations Act, in terms of public service boards and the statutory duties, and the wellbeing assessments that will be produced. Actually, how can we work together to produce outcomes that benefit everybody cross-silo? And so I think that was a fantastic piece of work. And the other one I really like is the Leeds Data Mill as well. I think that's a fantastic website, actually, in the way that the portal shares information with citizens and empowers them to make their own decisions as real-time things happen. So, for instance, they've got the parking spaces that are available at certain points in the city, so people can actually use that in real time and make the most appropriate kind of journey for them and make the citizens' lives better. So, I think it's a fantastic example as well.
Thank you, David. A number of the questions that are coming in are about tips and examples, practical examples. David has shared a few. We've had a couple already being shared also by Helen, but you do here, but that's okay.
Can I give the gold mine?
Yeah, please do,
David just mentioned Mark, another of his side projects is called Open Data AHA, and the tagline is brilliant. It's signposting to open data being used in real life.
Okay.
So it's just an emerging catalogue of stuff where open data kind of delivered value.
Okay.
And that's well worth.
And should we link? Can we send that link out afterwards? Would that be okay?
Yeah.
So, folks, a number of you are asking for practical examples. Obviously, I can understand why you're doing it because it help bring your business case to life. We will catalogue what examples that we've shared today and possibly others as well, if that's okay. Several of you have been asking those. If the examples you've heard are not what you're looking for, give me a shout, email us, or tweet us, and if there's something specific you're looking for that you're struggling with, give us a shout if that's okay.
Can I sneak one in?
Yeah, please do.
Our bathing water app is available, which allows customers to draw on bathing water quality details. Bathing water has been used by local authorities and tourism as a local site to get the instant information on water quality for swimmers.
Right, okay. What's this app called?
Bathing Waters. I can send a link. It's
Please
Bathing
do.
Waters app. And
Yeah,
there's a widget there which allows people to just create different views. So there's pre-prepared and customers can just draw.
And that's for all the bathing water sites around Wales then. Right, I think I'll be interested in that one.
Next holiday.
Yes, I'm going down to Pembrokeshire this week, and so I'm deciding more bathing waters in the whole of Pembrokeshire and the rest of Wales. So be very interested in that. Thank you very much. Okay. So a couple of questions others are actually coming in. Some more about the Information Commissions Officer. We've answered a couple of them. If there's something more specific you're looking for, can you come back to us if that's all right? Again, on examples. I'm being very conscious of time. I'm going to move on to the next steps, if you like, if that's all right with everyone. David, I'm going to kick off with you in terms of what we've covered this morning.
So
thinking about next steps for us as wearing our good practice team hats.
So yeah, as you've mentioned, about aggregating everything that's come through forward, so we'll absolutely do that. We'll be sending a questionnaire out so we can find out, what your thoughts about today is, how we can do other things in the future. Are there other resources that you'd like from us? What can we do to help kind of support you in this kind of agenda? So we'll be doing that, and we'll also look at general data sharing aspects as well, linking into other things that we do.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Helen, for you, you've been wearing the hat of someone from Natural Resources Wales this morning. What's the next steps, do you think, for people, given the kind of questions we've been having this morning? What would you be saying would be the next steps for them?
Engage, if we can, create a community here, which is a good idea around the blog that you've set up. There's an opportunity there, share best practice, work together. We've got the public services boards, which is a mechanism, obviously, for the wellbeing of future generations, which will generate this data sharing. The challenge is there in terms of next steps. It's not necessarily about raw data, it's about how we interpret it and how we have that conversation together about our relative priorities in a space. That's a different challenge for us, and that's a really important piece of work which we're going to be moving on to next.
And where are you in reality in terms of that? Because I realise it's the next challenge, but what's your current thinking about that?
Okay, our raw data is out there and open and available and accessible, and can be drawn into any of the public sector board members' own systems. But our local offices are discussing with each of the PSBs, public services boards, around their needs, and we're drafting some products which will highlight, in some cases, mapped products, other cases it's just high-level messages, but we're just working with the public services boards around what is that need at the moment. So
I understand, I know that there's a few people from public service boards listening in this morning. Is there a message that you'd like to give them about the open data in terms of making the shift?
It's that big picture, isn't it? Everybody's to play their part, I guess, is for all of the data to come into that pool that we need for wellbeing of future generations, and understanding those links between our different data sets and building those insights. We've got some interesting new questions to find, I think, when we start combining data from different sources and different silos and different sectors. Who knows what we're going to find, actually, but it's working together on these priorities. So it is about sharing data, building infrastructure together, and working together on sharing that data.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you. Dan, can I come to you?
Yeah, certainly. So for me, it's about, we've talked about community, we've talked about engagement, and talked about collaboration. Now, these are the key things that are going to bring data together as we move forward. And that's the key for me. It's not just about us working as a government department, you guys working in your department, third-party suppliers working over there. It's about us all combining to create something so powerful that it'll bring insights that we can't even imagine yet. And how we do that is not just about releasing more open data, because we can throw it into a spreadsheet and people can use it. They can do clever technical things with it. It's about us all coming together as a community underneath that publishing layer to say, these are the standards that we will adopt to release our data. If we call something age, let's call it age. Let's not call it something else. It's about harmonization. How can we say my thing is similar to yours? Or if it is similar, it's slightly different, how do we describe it as being something different? And in that way, we can actually then allow people to bring and connect data so much more easily. So that's my plea to everybody who's going to go down the open data path to look at how we can not just do it on our own, but learn from everybody and try to come together as a community so that we can make it better for everyone else when we want to join that data together.
Do you want to repeat that, please? Because it was so powerful.
Please.
Thank you. Thanks. Last but not least.
There's music to my ears because ODI Cardiff's mission is to help nurture and grow an open data community in Wales as a healthy open ecosystem. The risk is that now that there's excitement and people get with the program, that this activity happens confined within the silos of institutions or even confined within the silos within institutions. So we're here in order to help nurture that community. So my plea to the people is we actually have a platform for this community, and it's to join that. And it's quite simple. There's one link, bit.ly dash or slash ODI Cardiff join.
Okay. So what we'll do, we'll make sure we share that link with everyone, if that's okay. So folks, a number of you are asking for the speakers to share the one thing for them, one key message. So it'd be rude for me not to. So I'm putting everyone on the spot here. So because you're on my right, I'm going to ask you to say, what's the one key message you'd want listeners to take away from your perspective today on open data?
So I think it's about making communities better places to live. Really, it's thinking about what is our end goal, and focusing on actually how open data can help people and help communities.
Okay, thank you. Nice one. That one. Helen, for you?
Yeah, mine, it is about collaboration. It's also about that big picture. I think it's keeping that big picture in mind. It's so easy to sit in our own organisations in our silos and lose that big picture, and we never get that bigger benefit actually for the well-being of future generations' needs.
Could I be brave and say, this isn't about us, this is about helping the communities of Wales, people live next door to you. This is that's why it's actually happening, isn't it? At the end of the day, let's bring it down to the simplistic. This is what it's ultimately about. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Helen. Darren?
Yeah, collaboration. Don't try and do it on your own. There's lots of people out there who are willing to help. I'm more than willing to help and talk and rant about open data all day long to anybody who wants to listen. So please feel free to get in touch, collaborate, community, engage.
Thank you. Esco?
The open data world is wonderful, and there is real hard value to be got from playing in this game. So the one thing I'll say, because this will be unfamiliar for many people, and I think I'll say it directly to our guests here, is replace the fear of unknown with curiosity.
I like
Nice.
that. Nice one. Wonderful. That's fantastic. How can you follow that? Thank you, Esco. So, folks, it's now over to you. We would really love to develop a community of everyone who's been listening in this morning. Now, I know one person has registered, but there might be a number of people listening in. If there's more than one person listening in with you this morning, please can you share your emails with us? And what we'd like to do is share all this information with everybody and create an online community. We've got this thing in the Good Practice team where we're trialing something called randomized coffee trials. I'm just going to drop that little carrot, and I'm not going to explain exactly what it's about, but I'll send you a link to what it is. Basically, it's about trying to keep this community who was listening this morning going in a virtual or even in a real world. So I'm going to sign off. I'm Ina Lloyd. I'm part of the Good Practice team of the Wales Audit Office. I'd like to say a big thank you to all our speakers this morning. I put a few of you on the spot this morning, but you've been brilliant. Thank you very much. Can I say thank you to Bethan, thank you to Eros for helping with all the questions, but most importantly, thank you to you. Thanks for your time, much appreciated. Thank you for all your questions and your comments, and I can see some more tips that are coming through. Please feel free to email them after the event to us, and we will capture them in our blog. But if you'd like a community to be happening virtually, please let us know when we send us your feedback. Diolch yn fawr i chi gyd am cymryd rhan bore yma. Fe wedai chi hwyl a diolch. Thank you very much and good afternoon from Cardiff. Much appreciated.